Kent Hughes still making moves this late in the offseason, and Detroit adds a veteran for their playoff push. We'll discuss this and much more coming up on this episode of Hattrick HQ. I'm your host KC alongside my co-host Mark Pye, and welcome back to Hattrick HQ. With that said, let's get right into the first topic of this video, which is the Habs off-season moves continues. And yes, as an hour before we're recording here, the Montreal Canadiens announced that they're acquiring Gustav Lindstrom and conditional 4th-round pick for 2025 from the Detroit Red Wings for Jeff Petry at 50% retained salary going the other way. And we take a look at Gustav Lidstrom's stats here. He's played around, I think, 128 games in the NHL last season with 8 points in 36 games and 13 points in the season before in 63 games. And just in case if you don't know about much about Lindstrom's game, here's a little bit of a scouting report that we found on Lindstrom. He's a great two-way defender, a great puck-moving defenseman as well, a good skater with excellent vision, transitioning out of his own zone. He can hit it forward and stride with ease, and he has a very good point shot. It's both heavy and accurate. They also say here that Lindstrom is a puck-rushing defenseman who plays a well-rounded game. He's great at dishing out accurate passes, a good stick handler, and carries the puck up the ice with confidence. He sees passing lanes that some other defenders may not see, and he has a strong ability to make long and accurate outlet passes. And he has great agility at his size. I think he's 6'2", 183. Correct me if I'm wrong. And he can be slippery and dangerous attacker, and you need to keep your eye on him when he's out on the ice. And defensively, he has some growth potential, but currently he utilizes his stick to close off lanes and is willing to employ a physical game to keep opponents in check. He is a defender who can jump the rushes and who can play a good two-way game. So, Mark, I mean, me as a Montreal fan, I think I seen this Petry trade coming. I didn't really expect him to play a game in the Montreal uniform this season. What do you think, Mark? Did this trade surprise you at all?
Not really. When you seen Montreal pick up Jeff Petry, you kind of thought were they going to keep him, or were they just going to he might have asked for requests, so maybe like make him happy and put him into a team that might be pushing for a playoff run sooner than Montreal. I mean, I think it's a great ad. You see Kent Hughes has been going with the youth movement a little bit, especially on the back end. If you can kind of have these 6 guys on the back end that are a little bit younger, a couple vets in there that you can kind of like grow together, get into the system and everything. I think it's a great ad, especially for a guy that would kind of just toss in as a sweetener in the original trade with Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. I think Kent Hughes wants to run it with a young team and see how they do. I think he wants to develop as much young talent as he can in these upcoming years. So, in a couple of years' time, they can be playoff and cup contenders with a few extra tweaks. And he wants to build for the future, which is nice to see out of a Habs GM. I gotta say, went woos in the chat. As a W move for Kent here. I think Jeff Petry. Obviously, I don't think he wanted to play in Montreal just the way he left. That whole Ducharme incident. Obviously, he's not the coach anymore. But the way he left, he requested a trade. There was an incident with Montembeault behind the net in one of the games before he was traded. So it wasn't surprising to me. Obviously, Petry is a great defender. We'd love to see him on the team, but we hate to see him go. We hate to see him go as well. But just with the situation that Montreal was in, I just didn't think that it was the right time for Petry to come back.
No, I agree completely. The one thing I didn't really like is the 50% retained. You feel like you could have got a little more than a completely established defenseman and a fourth, but like I said, you get a younger guy, you can develop him. Worst cases, you take a flyer and he doesn't turn into anything. And I mean, the 4th round, you never know what you can get. You can hit on that, or you can just kind of use it in another trade if you wanted.
Yeah, I have to agree with you there. I was expecting a bigger name to come back than Lindstrom, but in my research here on looking at his game and seeing highlights of him this afternoon since the trade was announced, I think Lindstrom is going to make the roster this year. I think with Justin Barron still being able to clear waivers with no issues, I think we'll see him back down in Laval, and I think we'll see Lindstrom up maybe on the second pairing with Gouli, if not maybe the third pairing with Jack-Eye, depending on what Martin St. Louis wants to do there. But like I said, like Lindstrom is a great defenseman, a great puck mover. He'd be a great pairing, I believe, with Arbor Jack-Eye. I think you kind of have that physical guy out there, just throwing the body, blocking shots, and then you got someone on the right that can just pass the puck and move the puck up the ice with ease. And I think if that's what happens, I think we're gonna have to see what comes out of camp, obviously. But I think that's what's gonna happen. I think we'll see him start out maybe on the third line, and I think where Kovacevic has been there a little bit and he's been a bit more established, I think they'll bump him up to the second. And I think throughout the season, if Lindstrom plays well, I think he will get the nod to that second line with Gouli. But we're gonna get into the Detroit. What do you say?
He's the biggest win. Lindstrom wins the biggest in this trade because I think the extra ice time you've seen kind of get buried in Detroit. At least he gets some time now. He can establish himself, and I think he's the biggest winner of this.
Yeah, definitely. And I've seen a couple reports here when I was doing my research saying that he wasn't getting very much ice time. He was more of like a seventh D man for Detroit. So, he kind of comes into this young team that has a young demeanor that, nobody expects him to win. And I think he's going to excel in this organization. And we obviously hope the best for Lindstrom. We hope he plays really good this season. At least I do as a Montreal fan. But like you said, 50% retained is a lot to give up. But I think the real reason that Kent Hughes made this trade was to get that younger talent in and to, free up some cap space for if they need to pick somebody up in the coming weeks. But we're going to get into the second part of this video, which is the Red Wings add a grizzled vet on the back end. And of course, we're talking about Jeff Petry going the other way here to Detroit in this trade. We did talk about Petry about a week ago in our Petry to the Habs trade, but we'll give a little bit of a synopsis on him here now. Obviously, a tenured player in the league, Mark. It's a great ad for Detroit Red Wings team who I think are playoff contenders this year, and I think adding someone who has that experience in Jeff Petry is huge for their organization.
Yeah, no, I agree. Especially when you look at Detroit, they kind of have a bit of a younger defense, and the forward group is starting to get into the mid-20s. So it is to the point now you're kind of like, are they getting into the playoffs? They're going to make that push to finally get in, the rebuild over. But I think when you add a guy like Jeff Petry, it's great because, on your right side, you have Mo Seider. You can slot Petry straight into your second pairing, and then a guy like Justin Holl is your third, who in limited minutes is great. And I think that right side it might not be one of the top in the league, but it's better than most teams, and I do think it's way above average.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you. I think it's a really good defensive core. I think they just increased their defensive depth really well with this trade. Obviously, they added Ghost too, so maybe we might see a Gostisbehere and Jeff Petry pairing. But I know a lot of people are thinking, especially me as a Habs fan, that Sherratt and Petry reunited in Detroit. So we might get to see that pairing. You wouldn't want to be on the opposite end of the ice when that pairing comes down flying at you, would you?
I have nightmares thinking about that pairing, but
yeah, but it's definitely a great ad for Detroit. Like you said, they got Mo Seider, their young star up there, who's their right-handed defenseman, and they kind of got three left-handed defensemen that can kind of slot anywhere. Like they have Wallman, they have Gostisbehere, like we said, and Sherratt. So it'll be interesting to see what their pairings are like. But like we said in the video yesterday, like I think that this Detroit team is poised for victory this year. I think their young guys are developed now. I think they're coming out the other end of a rebuild, and I think that adding a player like Jeff Petry, who can get you maybe 30 points if he's playing second line minutes, I think it's just a great ad, especially for this organization looking for another Stanley Cup.
Yeah, they don't really give up a lot either. It's like you said earlier, it's a seventh D that they kind of couldn't get into the lineup constantly, a fourth round pick. With Petry at that low of a cap hit, it's almost just, the worst case is you buy him out. You could trade him at any point, but I think it's a low risk, high reward kind of ad.
Yeah, I think right now, just looking at it, I think this trade is a win for Detroit, definitely, because they're getting, a veteran and a presence in Jeff Petry that at like a $2.2 million cap hit, I think that's just great for them. Like I said, I think they needed a guy like this going into a playoff push. They kind of got that veteran there who can, and another right-handed shot defenseman who can show Mo Sider a bit of the ropes, because I kind of see a little bit of similarities in their game, especially when Jeff Petry was in his prime. So, well, we'd like to hear your guys' thoughts on this video down below, or on this trade down below. Sorry. Do you think this was a win for Detroit, or do you think it was a win for Montreal? I think it was a win for both teams, in my opinion. I think Montreal got rid of the guy who kind of didn't want to play there. They got a good prospect back in return, someone who could step up and play that third, second line role. And Detroit obviously won this by just preparing their decor for a deep playoff push. But we'd like to hear what your guys' thoughts are down below. Were you expecting this Petry trade, or were you expecting a star in return? We'd like to hear. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to drop a like down below. Make sure to subscribe. We're trying to hit 250 subscribers before the season starts. We'd love to see that happen. I'm KC alongside my co-host Mark Pye. Keep your stick on the ice.